This is an excerpt from a new James Grider novel I am writing, so it's like a rough draft. It's meant to convey the importance of living in a forest. And this whole thing could have been expressed in two sentences, but instead it's fleshed out for more than 2 pages. And it's such a stupid, unimportant thing as well. James Grider hitting someone's car with a tire by rolling it at their car because he was pissed off at the school for punishing him. And keep in mind that this is a character you're supposed to root for when he's in peril. Don't you wish you could roll a tire down a slope under a passing train and watch it get shredded? James fondly recalled another time earlier in his life when he had done significant mischief with a tire. In 8th grade, he had received detention because his language arts teacher overheard him speaking out loud to another student particular phrases she had found vulgar and disturbing. They had indeed been vulgar, but the teacher was only disturbed because she's a stupid bitch, or was pretending to be disturbed so she can justify being a bitch. There were rare occasions when James might create a certain bizarre type of portmanteau words hardly anyone else in the world would think up. Very specific kind in which regular words are fused either with cuss words or sex-related words. Usually the normal word had to share a letter or two or a syllable with the vulgar word when combined together. He hasn't made a full-time practice of this exercise yet, but at seldom when he does, it's almost like he inadvertently starts developing his very own branch of the English language, a unique dialect. Language arts indeed. There was no good reason for it. It was like some kind of an autistic thing or something that was particular to him, as peculiar as some Tourette's quirk, though seldom manifested. Carmela didn't do shit like that. She cringed at the asininity of it instead. In the case that landed him in trouble in class, he had been altering the titles of Clive Cussler's Dirk Pitt novels which he liked but now hates because he now knows them to be piece of shit propaganda, extolling the supposed virtuous nature of the US government. In reality, the US government is as bad as any villain in those sea-themed adventure novels, and much worse actually. This awareness had crystallized in him for certain in the last 2 months particularly. Back in that class, he had amused a body seated next to him by enunciating the titles of Dirk Pitt novels which he altered to sound vulgar in his special portmanteau way. Pacific Vortexex. The word sex was fused with vortex. Piss iceberg. Not a portmanteau, but imagine an iceberg made of piss. Haha. Rape Ace the Titanic. Raise changed to Rape Ace. Night Anal Probe. Trash Shitter. Shafak Wave. Urine Flood Tide. Vajhala Rising. Black Fart Wind. And Trojan Condom Odyssey. Vag was fused with Valhalla. Shit was fused with treasure. LOL. Most normies would have remarked with a scowl that he must be smoking something, to come up with weird sounding shit like that. The teacher must have heard him repeat "shofak wave" a little too loudly, so it penetrated through the low voices of the other classmates. Shock and fuck fused together. Perhaps she had eavesdropped it all, despite being 20 feet away, and James keeping his voice down, and other kids in the classroom chattering as well. She must have decided she couldn't pass up such an invitation to punish, not just any student, but James specifically, who tended to be most quarrelsome, who was already not in good graces with her, and has accrued multiple warnings over the weeks. James was handed out a detention for inappropriate speech. Oh, the child is saying cuss words. Oh, how dare the child pronounce cuss words, especially in such a smart alecky manner. Did he think merging them with normal words to create some new nonsense words will make it okay and undetectable? It's inappropriate. Inappropriate. The word inappropriate echoes gratingly in James's head to this day and shoots heat into his blood, inciting an awareness of all sorts of grudges he'd collected over the years. Apparently nothing about him is ever appropriate. Society just cannot be pleased no matter what. That's why he was right to have committed scores of homicides by now. And no one around had been bothered by what he'd been saying, except the teacher. She had to have faked offense, so the whole reason for his punishment had been a sham. That, and the pretense that his vulgarity can hurt the educational environment for other students. James could have tried apologizing and explaining himself, and that might have softened his teacher's attitude. But he considered that groveling, and that was beneath him. At the point when he received this detention, James was already beginning to sense the craftily obfuscated tyranny pervading America, and it frustrated him to no end that no one else seemed to share the feeling. Something was very wrong in this world, something very bizarre and sinister taking place under the surface that he can't put his finger on. Oddly, his mind was tuned into it, while most people around him were blithely blundering about, without a care, as if under hypnosis. Public schooling was an example of such a tyranny in his view. There he was, getting punished for nothing more than exercising a little creativity. And who was to blame? Certainly not himself. He didn't invent schools, and he didn't invent the rules. But the teacher couldn't solely be blamed either. The entire system was at fault, from the president on down. But why does the system exist? Because the people voted it in. Isn't that what we are taught? In America, all laws and all politicians are democratically voted into place. And who are the voters? The average people, which includes his fellow Eurekans, for example. By the people, for the people, right? Okay, so then it makes logical sense that for being made to suffer detention, he can take out vengeance on just about any stranger, and it won't be immoral. Just about everyone votes. The voters must have put in place the circumstances that caused his detention. So therefore, every random stranger who has ever voted in any election is responsible. Fuck the people. In the woods outside of town, James knew of a bald, discarded tire lying on its side, sunk into the dirt, that he'd seen again and again during his wanderings out in nature. Must have been there for years. He pried it out of the ground with a length of deadfall he'd used as a lever. Then he struggled, pushing and rolling it about 200 yards up a low-grade slope of a dirt trail. The tire was pretty much sized for a pickup truck. Next, it was a matter of hanging around for a while, killing time and waiting for some off-roading vehicle to appear, and hopefully it will be traveling up the slope when it does. People were constantly off-roading in the woods. It was only a matter of time. James would come around to where he had laid the tire in preparation for it to do its duty for 3 days in a row, and would spend 45 minutes to an hour each of those days in wait. On the third day it finally happened. A black Dodge Nitro RT appeared at the bottom of the slope from among the pines through which the road wended. Crouching so the undergrowth pretty much hid him, 12-year-old James propped up the tire on its bold tread and gave it a little nudge. It rolled away, building speed and bounding down slope inside a rut at the SUV, which abruptly jolted to a halt as the driver saw the swiftly oncoming trouble. The driver had only seconds to respond, and he wasted them, unable to think of what to do as the onrushing, hard and empty donut of black rubber impacted into the left half of the grille and bumper with a bang and a crunch, denting both and violently springing away onto its side in a 10-foot high leap. The damage inflicted on the Dodge was purely cosmetic. The fiberglass bumper had cracked down its length and would have to be totally replaced. It was good the slope had been straight. If not, the tire couldn't have gone around a curve without bounding off the road before reaching the car. What a relief it was that his stern and unstable father had vanished without a trace almost 3 months prior. No worries about him beating James for this malicious act. The police were supposedly still working to track his father down, but it seemed to be a very fruitless effort. Not that James would be getting caught or identified as the perpetrator in this. He had immediately hurtled into the densely packed pines to disappear from sight like a ghost. The off-road driver had glimpsed the motion of a person up the hill, but only after the tire struck. The fraction of a second glimpse presented to him nothing of the person's appearance, other than a suspicion that the individual was probably some kid, and had to be the one who had pushed the tire down the slope at his oncoming vehicle as a nasty prank. No point in getting out to pursue the kid into the trees. Not like he could see what track the little shit was wending through the trees. The vegetation was too dense. This is why forests are so essential to survival. The denser the better. You can do something nasty like that and vanish into the thick of trees and then feel marginally better about yourself and life, less helpless and not in control. James couldn't have pulled that shit off in the desert with low brush, where it would have been impossible to run away without the victim seeing precisely where he was heading. James to this day did not know whose vehicle he'd damaged, and didn't care. He had taken out his anger on what he imagined to be a Eurekan and an average American voter, someone who therefore shared responsibility for the system being ugly the way it is, even if it is only a fractional 1/1,000,000th something responsibility. Now with the Wick Dick, he is able to play vandalism pranks that are a millionfold more wicked.